Hello, everybody who is joining us on Zoom here for our, I don't even know how many Sappy Hours we've done, but welcome to tonight's Sappy Hour. My name is Emily Rondel, and I'm just helping with some administrative aspects of tonight's Sappy Hour. But before we really get started with anything too detailed, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. Now, I know it can seem a little bit strange to do a land acknowledgement when people are tuning in from all over the province or maybe even Canada or beyond as well. But it's important to recognize that wherever you are joining us from tonight, you are on traditional Indigenous lands and treaty territories as well. And if you're not sure which Indigenous land you are on, I would invite you to check out a resource. We'll put it in the chat. It's a website called native-land.ca, so you can check whose Indigenous land you are on. In Ontario, we have 46 different treaties between the colonial government and Indigenous First Nations, and we have at least 133 First Nation communities and reservations as well. So we have a really rich culture of Indigenous peoples here in Ontario. Where I'm joining you from, in particular, here in Toronto, these are the treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, as well as the other Anishinaabe of the Williams Treaty First Nations, also the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, in particular the Seneca, and the Huron-Wendat. And this is also District 1 Spoon Wampum territory, where I join you from, and I think a lot of people in Southern Ontario are joining us from tonight. District 1 Spoon Wampum was a covenant, an agreement, a treaty, actually, between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe, and it's an agreement to share the landscape responsibly so that nobody takes more than their fair share and that there's enough left for everybody. And that includes our non-human relatives. So I think that that's actually really pertinent to atlasing. And that concept kind of comes into why we atlas, how we atlas, and what we use that atlas data for. So thank you for that. Now, so if this is your very first Sappy Hour, I'm sure a lot of you are really old hat at this by now, but if in case this is the very first time you've ever joined us, it's pretty casual. Essentially, the format is this. Me and the illustrious panel I'm going to introduce in a moment cover one or two really short topics and short presentations that have something timely to do with atlasing kind of at this moment in time. Tonight, we have two, very exciting. And then what we'll do is we'll just open things up to take all of your questions, and the panel here around me will be able to answer questions you have, both about the topics that were covered, but also about everything and anything related to atlasing that you needed to know. So we'll take your questions. And we're going to do that in a couple of different ways because we're coming to you in a couple of different formats today. If you're joining us from within Zoom, if you're with us in Zoom tonight, I would invite you to hover with your cursor either at the top or bottom of your screen, and you will see that there's a Q&A tab. Please put your questions for the panel in there. And also just check it out, even if you don't have a question, and you can upvote other members' questions, and that will shoot them to the top of the queue. So we'll take questions there. If, on the other hand, you're joining us on Facebook, we'll take both questions for the panel and any other thing that you want to share in the comment section of the video, which I guess should be below us if I'm in the right place on, we'll see, on Facebook. We'll see how that turns out. Okay, and that leaves me to the good part, because I'm sure we're tired of listening to me, and that is to introduce our panel of experts and enthusiastic atlasers. So I'm going to start with Kaelyn Bumelis, and maybe she can give us a wave. You all know her. She's involved in every single aspect of coordinating the Atlas. If you've been in touch with the Atlas in any way, you know Kaelyn, and she's been on every Sappy Hour so far, so she'll be here to answer your questions. And then next, we have also a familiar face. We've got Mike Burrell, if you want to wave, although I'm sure your name's on the screen as well. He looks a little frozen, maybe he can't wave. But Mike Burrell is the head of the Significant Species Committee. He's also on the Volunteer Committee and a variety of other committees that I can't remember right now to do with the Atlas. He's a regional coordinator and extremely involved in atlasing and testing and coming up with how to do the Atlas in general. Mike's going to be sharing a short presentation with us just before we take questions, and it's going to be about where we are with atlasing. We just have almost finished our very first season of the third Atlas, and yeah, where are we at? Where, you know, and he'll motivate us maybe to do better next year or to finish up some atlasing for this season too, I think. And then last but definitely not least, we have kind of a new face for our panel. We've got Bernie Ladouceur, and I hope I said your last name right, Bernie. You can correct me if I was wrong later. And Bernie is here to share with us a very interesting survey, the Longeared Owl Survey, and he wrote the protocol for that. Now, if you're a birder around Ottawa, you probably already know Bernie. He does a lot of work on birds in the Ottawa region, including he coordinates the Ottawa bird count, the breeding bird count around the Ottawa urban region, as well. He's also the compiler for the Ottawa Gatineau Christmas bird count. And he's been birding with what he calls a biker gang of well-known Ottawa birders since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. So yeah, he's gonna be telling us all about this very exciting kind of late in the season Longeared Owl survey. So Bernie, is it okay if I hand it over to you and you can share?
Sure.
Okay.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, so just to start off with, yes, just to be clear, I'm not running Region 24 of the Breeding Bird Atlas. The Ottawa Bird Count is a separate project on urban birds, so just that's kind of an ongoing thing, quite separate from the Atlas. So just to make that clarification. So I'm just going to share the screen here. I'll do the desktop. I got, and I'm sharing sound, so I'm good. Okay. Everybody see my screen?
Yep, looks good.
That's good. Okay, so let me just get it up here, larger size or whatever. So we've done several owl protocols for the Atlas, and so there's no end of fun you can have going out surveying for owls. There's an Eastern Screech Owl protocol, sort of a barred owl and boreal owl protocol, and there's a Northern Hawk Owl protocol. No, it wasn't barred and boreal. It was great gray owl and boreal owl, I think. So there's like 5 protocols at least for owls. Plus, there's a nightjar survey as well. So I had a point to make here as far as that goes. Yes, there is no great horned owl protocol. Those are going to be just done on an encounter basis. And that is mainly because they apparently don't respond that well to playback. Now, playback is something where you have a recording of the species, you play it, and then you get a response. Hopefully, that's sort of the goal. So, but there are others that are passive surveys, and that means you don't play anything. You just wait for, you hope you get a response. And so it depends on the species what is employed. Now with great horned owl, they can be pretty intermittent callers, and don't appear to respond particularly well to playbacks. So as I said, there is no survey formally for that, whereas a barred owl does respond quite well, and so that does employ a playback in the survey. Long-eared owl, when you're talking about adults in the spring when they arrive, they don't respond particularly well. I would say they're worse than great horned owls as far as responding to playback. You might go out on a night and the adult is calling all night, and then come back the next day and the day after that and the day after that and not get any response at all. It's sort of they're calling when they want to. But the nice thing about long-eared owls with their juveniles is they do call a lot, and it's not in response generally it's not a response to other juveniles or whatever. They're just calling for food or attention or whatever it is, but they are very persistent callers. And so this survey is actually focused on juvenile long-eared owls. So this is why this is an owl. And this is why we get to cover all seasons. Earlier on we're going after screech owls and barred owls and so on, and then the nightjar survey. This is the latest survey, the last survey as far as the calendar goes with respect to the Breeding Bird Atlas. So the timing is July 1st to August 14th. So we're already in the window. It was suggested to me maybe we could start earlier. I just worry about further north, missing some of the birds. I was going to push it later, but then the birds in the south. So I think this is a pretty good window, July 1st to August 14th. And the juvenile owls, they'll leave the nest, but they stay close by, and they're really quite dependent for about 6 to 8 weeks on the adults. And so with that 6 to 8 week period, that gives us a pretty big window. And they can be, and they, as I said, they're persistent callers. So this is a passive survey. This is the quick guide in the protocol. As you can see this, it requires about 2 to 3 hours to complete it. You do 10 survey stations. So, and it's all passive, meaning you do not play anything. Even if you check something, you know, you want to check a call or something, you know, play it pretty quietly or whatever. Just and you especially don't want to play it before or during the listening period. We've decided to space the so we're using the point count stations. So we're using, just like all the other surveys, you use the point count stations, and you choose 10. And you go in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, except you're looking for good habitat. And good habitat is generally, well, we'll get to it, but you're looking for good habitat. And so the principle behind that, when you're looking for good habitat, is that if the station you're at is a concrete jungle or something like that, don't use it. Use something where you think there might be a long-eared owl. So if stations 1 and 2 aren't any good, go to station 3, and then maybe you've got your first of 10 point counts. That's kind of the way you want to approach it. And so you want to end up with 10 point counts. And if you can only find 8, then you're going to probably have to survey to find maybe another couple of stations that are sort of off the board within your square to round it out. So, you know, provide GPS points and all that kind of jazz. So that's it. You're going to survey on calm, mild nights with high visibility. There is possibilities of seeing long-eared owls. They quarter fields at night. They're long. They have long, kind of plank-like wings, fairly narrow, and they're generally holding their wings just a bit above the dihedral. So they're pretty distinctive. You got to watch out for short-eared owl though at night. Very similar looking species in flight. Matter of fact, the ears on the long-eared owl don't show very well in flight at all. There are other differences, but we do not use recorded sounds. You're just going to be recorded minute by minute. So 1 minute, what do you hear in the first minute? What do you hear in the second minute? What do you hear in the third minute? What do you hear in the fourth minute? And what do you hear in the 5th minute? And you're just listening and recording. So that's the main. Those are the main points. But I'm going to go down. I'm going to just scroll down. This is sort of like talking about the whole program and where long-eared owl starts. There's the emphasis again. No survey playback. When you're recording things, this is a little hint. You can get confused saying, you know, there's first minute, second minute, third minute, fourth minute, 5th minute, right? Kind of use the I call it the +1 principle here. If it's at 1 minute and 30 seconds, you're in the 2nd minute. 1 minute something, add 1 to the 1, you get 2. You're in the 2nd minute. If it's 3 something, you're in the 4th minute. So that's just kind of a handy thing to help you not get mixed up when you're out in the field. Training, this is important though, and we're going to play some calls. But before surveying, familiarize yourself with both juvenile and adult calls of long-eared owl. So there are some recordings available on the site. The most important thing though, your primary focus, you are going to be listening for the begging calls of juvenile long-eared owls. And it states here, you've got to, the species you really have to worry about, it's like a weak jay or killdeer call. Now, a bird like blue jay is not likely to be active at night. Killdeers can be very active at night. So that is really something. But it's generally, these are single notes, evenly spaced up to a few seconds apart. And you can have more than one juvenile calling at the same time. So it's actually very similar to the primary call of the adult male long-eared owl, the spacing, but it's a very different quality. So that is what you're going to focus. But notice here, there's much to say about this time of night. You might find it rather quiet going out at that time of year at night. Frogs have kind of stopped. Owls are not. The owls are not calling as. They're, spring is over, they're nesting or whatever, and some owls are pretty well done nesting. But nevertheless, at that time of night, while you're not going to get a lot of frequent calls, the possibilities are rather large as far as what might call, like a cuckoo or, and certainly whippoorwills and nighthawks are definitely possibilities there. You could get upland sandpiper. It's a problem with, they kind of give that kind of a toodaloo like note that they give. Problem is they give it on migration too, so that doesn't mean you've got an upland sandpiper necessarily in your area. Birds like American woodcock and Wilson snipe calling. Now, the American woodcock is not going to be doing its peent or its normal dance as much as you might just hear a whistle of the wings of the bird flying by, or Wilson snipe doing sort of a kick call. So I'm just saying there's a lot of kind of weird sounds that might happen out there. I would recommend bringing a recording device. Be careful if it's also your timing device though, because that can cause some problems. But bring a recording device, and you might be able to either sort out the calls yourself. I keep looking at the wrong thing here. I should be looking at my camera. Sort out the calls yourself somehow, or maybe give it to somebody like one of us to sort out what the sound might be. A lot of nocturnal mammals too. Raccoons and porcupines might remind you reminiscent of a like say a juvenile screech owl or something, and birds like something like an American toad, they've got kind of a trill. You might think you're inexperienced, kind of screech owl like, but most of these frogs won't be calling as much, but they will be calling a little. Insects will start up though at that time of year. Lots of crickets and katydids. Some of the crickets sound a lot like toads. So you're going to have these things, but the other thing you're going to have are juvenile owls, and these are probably calls you're not used to. Barred owl, great horned owl, although some of them will be well past being, that juvenile stage. Different calls from saw-whet and eastern screech owls. So that's a lot to carry around in your head if you're not experienced. That's why I recommend just getting a recording device if you can, just off your phone. I use on mine, just on my, it works pretty well. It's Rec Forge 2, so Record Forge. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see the blue one in that top row right next to my mail? I don't know if people, I'm not getting, but it's called Rec Forge, all one word, RECFORGE 2 Pro, 2 being Roman numeral 2. So that's one that I use out in the field just to capture something. So it's going to be better than the recording probably on, let's say I've got an Android phone here, a Samsung. The recording, the sound recording in it is not that great in there compared to downloading something. And I also find even just using, if you take a video, I find the recording actually better. I haven't tried out the new recording, but I just find, the video, a video feature in there actually gives you a pretty decent recording. So, okay, so that's it. The equipment's listed here. Those are the basic principles. So to clear your head of all the clutter, the thing you really want to focus in is just the sound of a long-eared owl. I got to go over here.
Long-eared owl.
So that's a male. So you can hear so that there's lots of other calls too, but that's a male, and you're not likely to hear it at that time of year. But you can, if you hear it in the spring, you know, it's still of interest, of course, for the atlas. But notice the cadence, that whoo, whoo. Well, the young ones, they've kind of learned the tune. They just don't have the voice. And so here is what you're going to be listening for. You can come far enough along. That's the call. Just ingrain that in your head. So this is on the Atlas site. This is where you get the, kind of where you get the protocol. See, there's where you get the long-eared owl protocol is right here. You can download it onto your screen or whatever, or you can get a printable version, download it onto your phone or whatever. But here are some of the sounds. It's not exhaustive, but these are some of the sounds that you might encounter. And so it's toward the end of the long-eared owl. It's sort of the last calls that you get for the long-eared owl on this stretch. So it's a minute and 50 seconds long, and so you're about a minute and 20 into it, I guess. Minute and 25 seconds, 27 seconds into it. Okay, so you can see how it's kind of Jay-like and it's killed her and kind of Kilder-like. I just wanted to play another couple of things here, like just a great horned owl, juveniles.
Great horned owl.
So you can see there could be a bit of confusion. That's a huskier sound. So that's toward the end of the great horned owl. And as I said, it's getting a little late, but you still have older ones. I like, for instance, long-eared owls I've had into September and even heard them in October. So you can imagine that you might get a great horned owl maybe at the beginning of the survey period. So, but it's a more powerful sound. It's not like a really wimpy sound. And then if you're lucky here, I'm just going to go in and look at barred owl. And there's no recording of juvenile barred owl on the site. I know it's on the Sibley guide. Everybody knows that call. If you get a Chuckville's widow in Ontario, that's pretty exciting. Anyway, that's a juvenile barred owl. Kind of a really spacey sound. So you're not surveying for those species, but you're going to record all the owl species you hear during this. And if it's a juvenile, that is confirmed breeding. Okay, so that's basically the principle. And so maybe that's the last thing I want to show you, is that you're going to, at this time of year, especially with not everything in the breeding, there are two other things that you need to be aware of. And one are the safe breeding dates. So the entire survey is within the safe breeding dates for barred owl, short-eared owl, boreal owl, and great gray owl. If you're in Toronto, you'll be lucky to get those last two, that's for sure. But you see the safe breeding dates for great horned owl, June 30th, eastern screech owl, July 15th, northern hawk owl, 15th, northern saw-whet owl, July 31st. It's the same for the two nightjars, whippoorwill, and common nighthawk. So if it's beyond those dates, you need to have some real justification for indicating them as a possible breeder within that square. So that is something to really be aware of. The other source of confusion that you're going to run into, because the recording here, is that there are owl survey codes, and then we have breeding evidence survey codes. And there, unfortunately, there are two that you might use rather frequently, X and S. On the owl survey code, that means a bird is heard, okay? Heard that, and so you're going to mark an X when you're filling out your survey. So there it goes. Here's, oh, I should have enlarged it, sorry. Survey right here. You see X, that means you've heard the owl in there. However, if you hear a species, let's say you had a great horned owl and it's on August 14th, well, you may not, you may just ignore it or whatever, but that's kind of used, that code is kind of used for birds that are in the area that you perceive to be really a non-breeder. Okay. Then the other one is S. S means a singing bird as far as the atlas goes. So that's what the breeding code is. And you can see here on the example, barred owl, that's a calling barred owl, you know, doing its whoo, 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 kind of a territorial thing within the, you know, the safe breeding period. So that's why that S is there. But the S here for long-eared owl, that's in the survey part, 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, 4 minute. So that means you've seen the long-eared owl. So two totally different things, but if you're in the middle of the night, you just may not have those things straight. Just remember the difference between, you're using basically two codes only for the owl protocol, X and S. They just happen to be also be breeding bird survey codes. And maybe when you're out in the field, if you think you might get confused, just do the owl listening and observing part, X and S, and then fill in the breeding bird codes after the fact. And that way you, I mean, you should be make a note where you actually had the evidence. So there you can see, but there's an example right there in the protocol on how to do all of that. One more thing is just, if you really want to get into long-eared owls, and by the way, if you can come up with a good recording of juvenile long-eared owl, there seems to be a real lack of them, like even on Zeno Canto and all those guys in North America. A lot of the recordings that we have are from Europe. And matter of fact, the first time I heard them, it seems like some of us made this discovery separately, and that'd be an interesting story in itself, just how we came upon this. But I had to go and we'd flushed a long-eared owl and stepped out of the car, and I thought certain it was a long-eared owl, and then I heard these calls across the field and realized, yes, it's I don't know what that is, and went home and checked long-eared owl juveniles and so on. So but this goes, if you go to the sound approach, long-eared owl, I think it's British, but it goes into all kinds of stuff, like what the female calls when the male's returning to the nest and all that kind of stuff. So you can really just fill your boots here when it comes to that. So that's the sound approach, long-eared owl. It's quite fascinating. I don't think I have anything more at the moment. I probably do, but I think I'll stop sharing.
Thanks, Bernie. Appreciate it. Mike, if you want to come on camera, I'll start sharing some slides for you.
All right, sure. Thanks, Bernie. That's awesome. I'm really excited to do some long-eared surveys myself. I sort of test ran it last year and was pretty excited to get my first begging juveniles right around this time last year. So looking forward to doing more of it. Anyways, yeah, so before we get into the questions, I just wanted to give a few quick slides on some of the impressive stats from where we're at so far with the data that's been entered into the website. So you can go to the next slide, Emily. So the top species that have been reported so far to the Atlas They're listed here, but American robin's #1. It's been reported from over 1,400 squares across the province so far. As you see on the list, it's a lot of sort of familiar backyard birds from southern Ontario, where, especially in year 1, a lot of our atlasing effort has focused. So some of the other stuff might sneak into that top 10 as we get more coverage of the north. Okay. And on the other end of the spectrum, these are sort of the rarest breeding species that have been reported to date. So these are all species that have been reported from just a single square with breeding evidence. So canvasback, eared grebe, white-winged dove, chuck-will's widow, little gull, western kingbird, white-eyed vireo, Sprague's pipit, pine grosbeak, lark sparrow, lark bunting, and blue grosbeak. So some pretty amazing birds. It's kind of incredible, that list already. I can't wait to see what else we add to that list. Next. And in terms of the regions around the province, I think last time we showed the total number of hours and total species, but this time I wanted to change it up and show which regions have the most effort per square. So number of hours per square during the peak breeding season. So Muskoka is #1 at 21.5 hours per square. Pretty incredible. Toronto's not far behind, followed by York and Ottawa, then Halton, Niagara, Durham, Norfolk, Peterborough, and Simcoe. But it's pretty impressive, I have to say, the effort across the board already. And some really impressive results at the square level. There's 8 squares across the province that have reported more than 120 species so far. Leading the way is 17 TMH28 in Region 3, which is Lambton. And that square is around Port Franks, so sort of just west of Pinery Provincial Park. And they've got a whopping 135 species already. But some pretty impressive results from Region 8, Bruce, Region 40, Rainy River, Region 13, Simcoe, Region 5, Norfolk has a couple in that list, and same with Region 24, Ottawa. So congrats to all those atlasers racking up those totals. I'm sure more squares will join that club shortly. And then finally, just wanted to recognize some impressive efforts in terms of number of checklists submitted to the Atlas so far. Don Sutherland is maintaining his lead with just shy of 1,000 checklists. And to be honest, I made this list yesterday. He's probably over 1,000 now. But some pretty amazing numbers of checklists coming in from lots of folks. So everybody can take a pat on the back. It's been a great year so far. Lots of great finds, lots of impressive effort, and we're just getting warmed up. So just wanted to give a couple quick stats. If you want to explore some of those sort of stats on your own, on the Atlas website, under the Explore tab, there's the Atlas data summary option, and you can click on that, and there's all sorts of stats you can check out and see that stuff. Anyways, that's all, and I think we're ready to take some questions there, Emily.
Yeah, I think last time we did the stats, Tyler was ahead, and I guess John Sutherland saw it, and so now he's shot up to the top. Yeah, if everybody wants to come back up on camera, Bernie and Kaelyn, we'll get some questions going here, because a few of them have poured in. Maybe the other two have left, Mike. I don't see him yet, but I'm sure they'll come back eventually.
I can see him.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's just me. Oh, there everybody is. Sorry about that. It was my fault. Okay, so the very first question that we'll take, I think, should be maybe from Facebook. We don't forget about you over there on Facebook, guys. Don Miles asks, and this is one for Bernie, I think. Can you give any more details about the habitat requirements for long-eared owl point count selections and what should be looked for those?
Yeah, it's in the protocol, and I realized when I was handing it over to Mike that I'd failed to address that. So you're basically looking for kind of wooded areas around Ottawa. It tends to be like mixed woodlands and so on, but very kind of some tight trees tight together and so on. I know in Southern Ontario, pine plantations sometimes are really kind of a good area. And even in Ottawa here in the city, when it's not ideal, we've had them in exclusively deciduous, but really kind of tight areas as far as the nesting goes. But then you want adjacent meadows or fields to hunt in. So those are really the two criteria. So sometimes it might be in an open woods situation, but somewhere in that open woods, there's kind of a tighter bit of trees. They use old nests, crows, hawks, sometimes even herons. And the first one I ever saw was in a great horned owl nest. It was absolutely dwarfed. So just like this, what's it doing in there? Okay, so that's it. And so what'll happen is these owls will, the juvenile owls will actually venture out from the nest to kind of the edge of the field area, whatever that field. So agricultural areas are good, but if you're not in an agricultural region, sometimes you can have just these kind of meadows and so on that will suffice or whatever. So that's where there will be, often the juveniles will be calling from. And then there's sometimes an opportunity to actually see the shadow, like the silhouette of long-eared owls, quartering the fields or whatever.
That's great. I think there were a few questions about habitat, so I think that answered it perfectly.
Yeah, and it is in the protocol, but it's brief. Yeah.
Good for people. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. I guess the answer can always really be read the protocol, because I'm sure they've thought of it there. We had a question really early on, and Kaelyn actually jumped in and answered it, and it's not about long-eared owls, so Bernie gets a bit of a break. Ian Sturdy, hi Ian, asked, is there a special email or place where you can report any problems with the Nature Counts app? And Kaelyn, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a website, and originally it was hosted on our Atlas website, but because the Nature Counts app kind of encompasses more than just the Atlas, Birds Canada has taken it onto their own website. So it's birdscanada.org /app-feedback, and I'll just post that in the chat for everyone so you don't have to, jot it down super quick. But there is kind of like a fillable form where you can fill out, what type of phone you have, what operating system, and what the issues are. So yeah, I've just put that in the chat for anyone who's interested there.
And for those of you on Facebook, we'll add it there too in a minute. So don't worry about that.
I'll just add to that if you don't even want to memorize that, it's on the Atlas website under Get Involved. There's a button that says App Feedback. Oh. That takes you to that link.
It does,
so maybe we won't post it on Facebook. Okay, so yeah.
Kaelyn, you put that button.
I did. I know. Yeah. Oops. But yeah, it is there. It's on the website.
So many ways to report problems with the app, everybody. You're sure to find one of them. Great. Well, a couple of ways to go. Okay, another question for Bernie, I think. So Jeff Carpenter wants to know about how you decided, or why you decided on the 1-minute intervals for the long-eared owl survey, as opposed to how that differs from the other owl surveys.
Oh, the 1 minute, I think they're used for all the owl surveys, if I'm not mistaken. The 1-minute intervals. So
yeah. So
I think this is just for. I think they just like to gather data to see how frequently it calls. They do it. I know we did it for Ottawa, the Ottawa bird count, just for land birds. So we would do 2-minute intervals over a 10-minute period. So apparently there's some value in knowing that the bird called in the 3rd minute and then the 4th minute and the 5th minute, rather than was calling throughout the entire period. So basically, if it's calling in 1 minute, yeah. So so that was imposed. That was not. That wasn't my idea or our ideas.
I'll just add one thing to that. So the 1 minute, splitting it up by 1 minute, it really helps. It's for the data analysts. So it really helps with them with calculating something called detection probability. And that can tell us a lot more about not just the information about what we get, about who detects it, but it kind of helps us understand how likely is it that it was there but you missed it, kind of thing.
Perfect. Yes, detection probability is probably the least fun part of analyzing atlas data, but it's important to do. Okay, thanks guys. One more thing just for Bernie is maybe you can put in the chat of Facebook, and again, I'm sorry, in the chat of Zoom, and we'll put it in Facebook as well, the links to some of those, sound resources that you were pointing to during your presentation.
Oh, okay.
I think people are always really interested. They may not be as familiar with places to get some of these sounds from, and they may not know exactly where to find the ones that you pointed to on the Atlas website as well. So it's just always nice for people to have links.
Okay.
Okay, a couple of other questions, not long-eared owl related. So let's do this. This could be a good one for either Mike or Kaelyn. So jump in, whoever wants to answer. How can you retrieve your checklists from nature counts? Who wants to answer that?
I can.
Kaelyn's gonna. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You can go ahead, Mike. I don't mind.
Okay. It's yeah. So when you're logged into, you have to go to the Atlas website. You can't do it on the app, at least not yet. Maybe at some point in the future on the app. But you got to go to the Atlas website, log in, and then it's under Explore, and click View Data Forms, and that will show all your Atlas checklists. If you're a regional coordinator, you'll see other people's checklists there too. So for those RCs on the call, don't be confused. But if you're an Atlaser and you're not an RC, then you should just see your checklists. And there's some nice handy tools there that let you sort of filter the results if you're looking for, I did this the other day. I got to see that Sprague's pipit in Rainy River, and when I entered it, the website had disabled the ability to add breeding evidence to that record because it was so rare. So I couldn't add breeding evidence yet, but I had to go back and find that checklist to add the breeding evidence code to it. So I was able to use the filters because I've got a couple hundred checklists already. So I used the filter for show me checklist with Sprague's pipit on it, which there wasn't very many. And then I was able to open it up. And I think there's somebody else wondering about how to edit a checklist, and that's how you want to do that too. There's a little edit button beside each checklist. So
perfect.
Two birds with one stone.
Ooh, I love a bird pun, Mike. Awesome. And yeah, I think people think you might be able to do it in the app, but they are used to being frustrated with the eBird app that way, really. So it's no different, everyone. Okay, Sue Hayes is curious a little bit about, she wants some clarification about what you said about long-eared owl habitat, Bernie. She wants to know how much meadow you need to forest. So she says both of her squares are mainly forested with very small meadow habitats. Is it even worth kind of surveying there? What do you think?
Well, no guarantees. That's what I think. So pick the best habitat possible. That's it. So that's what I would say. So but it's amazing sometimes what birds make do with. I'll have to say that. So that's if you've got nothing but forests and there's a few meadows, I would go there. And so, but maybe pick the largest meadows possible.
Yeah, and you definitely won't find any if you don't survey at all, Sue. So you may as well give it a shot.
That's
right?
the way it goes. Yeah, that's right. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm amazed sometimes what birds end up with. In the city too, as I said, right along the Rideau River. Now we've had a couple where it's just been basically where our transit way was, and there was, like a small woodlot in there, and then just field beside our transit way, right in the center of this, and they bred there. So it's yeah, it's sometimes those areas are actually kind of primo because they don't have the pick of wherever they want to go, right? So
it funnels them into a small area.
Funneling into a small area, so it might even be advantageous. That's
a very encouraging answer. Thanks, Bree.
Okay, I'm just making you feel good. So.
I wanted to share a quick story that sort of relates to what Bernie was saying. Last year, when I was trying out some long-eared owl sprays, I had this like super plan, or I identified all these spots where I was going to try for long-eared owl bagging calls, and I spent a whole night driving around. Like I stopped at like 30 or 40 places, and I didn't get any long-eared owls, but I got at any of those stops, but I got long-eared owl between two stops at like, a random place that I didn't think looked very good, but it fit Bernie's description. There was some dense deciduous trees and a farm field. And luckily I saw one fly over my car as I was driving. It was light enough. And as soon as I stopped the car, before I even rolled down the windows, I could hear the bagging call. It was so loud.
That's awesome. And it kind of goes to show as well, like what habitat looks like from the road. It doesn't always indicate what the habitat actually is, right? Once you get off. So the sight lines can be deceptive sometimes from the road too. It's good. Okay, we've got a breeding code situational quiz here from James Kirkland. So I feel like we'll have Mike Burrell and Kaelyn, like, we'll see who gets to it first. So he says this, everybody. Paddling on the Magnetawan last week, somebody else asked one and it disappeared. A broad-winged hawk flew down and vocalized at us, and another adult vocalized from a tree, and some other calls that seemed like young were coming from further back in the tree. What breeding code should I use for that? So the young weren't like confirmed, but the adults were the pair and they were agitated. So I don't know, what do you think?
I guess it would depend how sure you are that those were young broadwings. If you're sure they're young broadwings sitting in the trees, then you could use the FY code, like fledged young. But if you're not sure, then you'd have to use something about, I don't know, just H, I guess. If you're sure it's a pair, you could use the pair code. Need more data.
And James, it's year one, so see how sure you can get next year now that you have this excellent location for Broadway too. So yeah, I don't know. From that, I would put FY maybe. It seems like they were probably, but let that not influence. Okay, Lynn asked, again, this is the Longeared Owl survey. Actually, Kaelyn, do you have any opinions on the breeding code answer before we move on? No?
I'll be honest, I was looking up something for another question that I saw in there. I'm so sorry.
That's fine. Okay, good. Well, we covered that. Okay, so Lynn asks this is about Longeared Owl surveys. For the Longeared Owl survey, must all the survey points be in my square? Must all the survey points be one of the 40 survey points on my square map? So this kind of may be a question about contacting regional coordinators about which squares you should be surveying in, but actually, Kaelyn, I hate to put you on the spot. Maybe you're still Googling something. Do you want to
That's okay.
cover that one?
Yeah, so they do all have to be in, your square or the square that you're going to be doing the survey in. And so, as Emily said, definitely chat with your regional coordinator and see kind of who's doing what so that we're not necessarily duplicating effort, can maybe like spread things around a little bit. But I think in the Longeared Owl survey, Bernie had put that if you can't find 10 suitable spots in your 40 point count stations, that you could find another point or create another point a certain distance away from a previous point that you had done. Isn't that right, Bernie?
Yeah, it's got to be we've set, I don't know if it's really necessary, but we set it at 1 kilometer from any point that you use. It's 1 kilometer. I'm sure half of that with 500 meters would be probably pretty safe. Although, I mean, they're weak, but it does carry. So yeah, that's right. You check your 40 to see if you've got 10, and then if you need to create a couple of others, go ahead and do that.
Sounds good. Patrick Martin.
Sorry. I was just going to say, just to add to that, I know in previous surveys we've said, like, if you can't get 10 points at all, like that we'll take the points that you can get. So it's not like if you can't get 10 points, don't do any, do as many as you're able to. So I just wanted to add that in.
That's a good point. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's still worthwhile. Okay, another question just about, if anybody knows offhand, Bernie might, what can you tell us about where long-eared owls were found kind of in Ontario in Atlas 2? They couldn't check the species map online because I guess the website was down when they looked. But yeah, can you give a sense of that just for people who are interested?
I should have looked that out. Yeah, as far as that goes. Yeah, I can't remember all the spots. Yeah, because I just can't remember that. As far as Ottawa goes, certainly Atlas 2 was not nearly as good as Atlas 1. Okay, so, but as far as at least finding owls, but we did an owl count back in 1981. And we found 57 long-eared owls during that region. So I don't think that's repeatable, quite frankly, if you know what I mean. So that's it. I just we just hit some. It was an exceptional year. It was over a 3-week period that we did this, and things have changed. I think we only had 16 barred owls, which is like hard to believe.
Wow.
Like, it's just how that switched around. I don't think barred owls are very nice to probably like the long-eared owl. I think the expansion of barred owl probably would maybe preclude that. And great horned owl, though, is that was our most abundant owl back in 1981. It's nowhere near the case now. So I wouldn't necessarily go with just what happened. It's interesting for comparison points of view, but it's why we do this atlas. But I would not look at previous results to habitat changes, trees grows, meadows grow over, line gets cleared, whatever. I would not necessarily use that as a guide, if that's what you're asking.
And they can be they can be quite cyclical as well. And well, I'm not sure if the breeding population is as cyclical as the wintering populations, but things change a lot.
Yeah, there's an interesting question in there with Jeff Carpenter, Jeff Carpentier, Jeff Carpenter. Yes, just talking about 2 or 3 in a green, like they do use heron nests, but that's kind of interesting that they were close together. Now you find them in colonial situations in the wintertime, but I hadn't heard of that. It doesn't surprise me, but maybe there's sufficient food, but I'm not. That's an interesting observation.
And just so people on Facebook know what Jeff said, I'll just kind of read it out for them too. He said, years ago, I recall finding multiple long-eared owl nests close together, and in a pine wood lot. Is that normal? So that's really interesting, especially since we know that they can be kind of semi-colonial in the wintertime. I am curious to know how that translates again to their breeding habits. So.
And they were using green heron nests, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
That's right. So this is, So maybe just the availability of the nests made them, tolerant of each other. I don't know.
Yeah, and Don Sutherland's pointing out that they are sort of nomadic and based on prey availability. So they will move around, and kind of going back to that question about where they were found in Atlas 2. I think Don has told me once before that they're one of the few species in Ontario that's actually been found in nests in every single regional municipality, county, district. Like they've been found everywhere. They've bred everywhere, and it could move from one place to another in any given year. So, wherever you are, you have a shot at them.
Brings up another important point here. It was just as far as comparing to previous year. This method of using juveniles was not employed. It was actually employed maybe in the Quebec Atlas the last time round, and with some success. So that really this radically changes detectability, that going after juvenile, because they are really kind of buggers to find in the spring, if you know what I mean. If you want to do it on the, if you're not persistent, you want to do it on the. But this is a game changer as far as surveying long-eared owls.
Super cool that a passive survey is going to increase detectability so much without any playback for an owl species. That's really cool.
I do have just one thing to add to that. Sorry, I know we've said not to use the Atlas 2 maps and stuff, but if anyone ever is looking, I know it's on Nature Counts under kind of the species maps, but there is also a spot on the Atlas website. There's a heading called Atlas Archives, and there's a little subheading under there for species maps. So if you are ever looking, they are there on the Atlas website as well as Nature Counts.
Awesome.
Old forestry cut blocks. Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, there's sneaky questions that keep getting by me, everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There is one kind of comment on Facebook that says that somebody heard begging calls in Vermilion Bay last summer and put it onto iNaturalist. So obviously anything that you heard last summer was outside of the breeding period and it can't be added to the Atlas. and we've established how changeable long-eared owls are in their breeding habitat, but you know, it's worth going back and checking it out and making sure in places where you found them before. Just wanted to address that. So we're kind of coming to the end of our time. It kind of flew by for me anyway. I wanted to ask, especially Kaelyn, do you have any announcements or anything that you'd like people to know about before we sign off for today?
No, nothing that I can think of just off the top of my head, other than, you know, the classic stick to your COVID guidelines, and, you know, things are opening up. So that's very, very hopeful. But yeah, just keep those things in mind.
Okay, sounds good. Where are we at? We do have one more question. Okay, one more question just came in. So before I ask anybody else for any parting words, why don't we just address this one? Gerard Phillips asks, you know, about the point count numbering, the sequential number. I have a square like this, so I feel your pain. The sequential numbers in the square are kind of scattered all over, so it's quite an annoying thing to do them in the order from kind of lowest number to highest number. Do you need to do these sequentially, or can you do it in a way that makes the most sense for your traveling? Who wants to answer that one?
I can.
Okay.
Yeah, so you want to pick, like for the long-eared owl, you want to pick the first 10 suitable point counts. So you do that in sequential order, pick your 10. But you can, on your nightly survey, you can plan the most efficient route. So don't start in one corner, drive to the next corner, then back to the same corner. Do it in the order that makes sense. Just make sure you pick the first 10 suitable sites. And that's the same with all the other protocols.
Yeah, and by this point, you'll probably have been to these sites a few times already for various other protocols. So you'll probably know what makes sense in terms of habitat, and you can plan if you visited them before. Okay, thanks for that being the last question. Mike, do you have anything that you wanted to add before we head off?
Not too much. Just remind people that we're out of the peak breeding season for data collection, but it's still a really great time to be out getting data. It's actually like the best time of year to be confirming species. So like if you go out and you go for a walk, it's like hard not to find a bird carrying food or something like that. Like there's fledged young everywhere. There's, you know, adults collecting food. So it's really the best time of year to be atlasing in some ways. So don't give up just yet. Keep going on, and you'll get those breeding evidence codes boosted for your square.
Good advice.
And stay cool.
Always good advice as well. Bernie, how about you? Anything that you want to say before we sign off?
No, just make sure if you're doing just ingrain that call in your mind. That's all.
That rhythm as opposed to the tone. That was good. That was a good tip. Okay.
Yeah, and they do vary in tone and pitch, but it's more or less the same call according to age, their sex, or whatever. But it's basically the same monotonous call. Yeah.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you everybody for joining us and for coming to one of our kind of last Sappy Hours of the year. But I think we may have one or two more up our sleeve. So yeah, you'll be hearing from us soon. Have a great night, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
All right.